What's going on, guys? Today we've got a brand new video for you. This is going to be on a very interesting steel here. It's Vancron Superclean. So obviously this is a Benchmade Anthem in a Vancron Superclean Reblade by Kase Knives, Switzerland. This Reblade was made in 2019, and I don't think he's doing Reblades anymore, but he makes a few different fixed blade designs, and he makes his own folder now. So I'm going to put a link to his website down in the description. These steels and heat treat are kind of what he specializes in. So if that's something that interests you guys, I definitely go check out his website. So a little bit about Vancron. It's relatively new as far as steels go. It was released in 2018. With this knife being made in 2019, it really wasn't out for very long before Roman made this knife. Vancron has a super unique composition. It only has 1.3% carbon, but 1.8% nitrogen to go with that, 4.5% chromium, 1.8% molybdenum, and a whopping 10% vanadium. Despite that nitrogen in the composition, it's not stainless. Nitrogen only helps boost the corrosion resistance when there's enough chromium in solution. So this is a nitrided tool steel. It is not stainless, and it actually does have a little bit of patina on it here and there. I'm not sure how well the camera will pick that up, but there is a little bit of patina on this. This knife, by the way, was sent over by Elliot at Sharp Thinking. He's had this Reblade since 2019. I think it was a pass-around knife for a little while, so some people got to experience this. I saw he put it up for sale a little while ago, and they decided to pull it, which is probably a good decision, considering the price of the Anthem nowadays, as well as the Reblade. Pretty unique knife here, and it'd be pretty expensive if he were to resell it at any given time. So definitely a huge thank you to Elliot for sending this out to me for testing. So Vancron has that high vanadium combined with the carbon and nitrogen, and it creates something called vanadium carbonitrides, which is a little bit different than the vanadium carbides that you hear about. They're smaller than the vanadium carbide because the nitrides coarsen more slowly during the high temperature processing in production, and the total volume of the carbonitrides is about 16%, which puts it in the realm of like 10V and Vanadis 8 as far as total carbide volume goes. If you look at Uddeholm's data sheet, they show a wide variety of hardnesses that this can be run at, from anywhere from 58 to 66, but this is actually run at 68 HRC. So custom protocol developed by Roman. So let's talk about sharpening on this guy. First sharpening was my standard progression of 200, 600, and 1000 grit diamond plates, followed by 16 and 4 micron CBN emulsion on leather. This came up very aggressive and sticky, and it cut free-hanging paper towel very, very easily. And it tested at 145 best on the best tester. The second sharpening I did on it was the exact same stone progression, followed by 1 micron, 0.5 micron, and 0.25 micron mono diamond emulsion by Stroppy Stuff on leather as well. This came up a little bit less aggressive after the strops, but it was still very sticky to the touch, and that tested at 126 best. And that's actually what this is at right now. Super sticky to the touch. I can feel it grabbing right into my fingertips very easily. Super aggressive edge. And in sharpening, for something at this hardness, it wasn't finicky at all. Sometimes you have super hard steels like Maximate that can be a little bit temperamental with burr formation and wanting to break off. And that makes sharpening overall a bit slower because you have to be more careful forming a burr and removing it. But this didn't really have that issue at all. It formed a burr very, very fast, and I never had any issues with deburring it. It was a dream to sharpen. It sharpened very much like MagnaCut, 4V, and Crewwear, that class of steels, which is impressive considering the carbide volume and the hardness of this blade. And all of that's more than likely due to the low retained austenite from Roman's custom heat treatment. So let's talk about edge retention on this guy. Outside of the carbide volume, I really didn't have any expectations for where this would land. I was thinking somewhere around like the K390 range, but I wasn't totally sure. I did read Laren's article on Vancron a few weeks before I tested this. I didn't remember where it landed as far as like the chart goes, so I wasn't really totally sure where it would land. I kind of like to go into these things blind, so that way you're not like influencing a test where you try and stop the knife kind of where it should be, like subconsciously. It's just kind of better if you don't know. So this was the standard testing protocol. It was that same initial sharpening, and then I tested on cardboard until it would no longer cut computer paper cleanly. After so much cutting that my thumb started to blister, it finally died at 1,272.38 feet. That's not a typo. You heard that right. That is 500 feet more than the next closest, which is Z-Max, I believe. So more than Z-Max, more than Maximate. I haven't tested any Rex 121 yet, but I believe it's probably going to be more than that. More than K390, all of it. 500 feet more than the next closest. So all of that cutting, and then I was testing the best score every 50 feet. That took just over 4 hours to complete, and that was over 75 different best tests on this knife in a 1-inch section. That is a staggering amount of cardboard, and I honestly felt like I made a mistake somehow in the testing. I followed the exact same protocol that I always do, the same sharpening, the same cardboard, everything. And the result was so surprising that I ran another test with a different steel that I'd already tested to make sure that there wasn't something odd going on with this batch of cardboard, and those results came out within spec. So no issues with the cardboard. This thing's just an absolute freak. Also, plotting those best scores every 50 feet backs up what I was feeling cutting the paper, so that kind of backs up that result as well, and kind of gives me something else to lean on as far as everything going correctly. This thing just wouldn't stop cutting. So I just want to kind of briefly talk about like using the best tester, because I did that in the last video as well. When I first bought that best tester, I had intentions of using it to decide when a test was done versus when the knife wouldn't cut paper anymore. I was trying to find like a hard number that steels would stop at versus like the subjective feeling of a knife catching on paper. Through trial and error, though, I've kind of discovered that there's really no clear number to stop at, since the best scores are an average across that 1-inch section that I cut in, and the paper test can stop as soon as there's one small spot that's taken enough deformation to catch in that spot. Throughout a dozen or so tests with plotting best scores, the range that they stop at, it ranges from 315 bests all the way up to 463. So this ended in that range, but you can see how using those numbers on when to end the test isn't really a perfect science, so I can't really do that. Now, with all that being said, if you've watched enough of my edge retention testing in the past, I've described how some of these steels, mainly the high carbide and high hardness ones, kind of self-sharpen to a degree, and they kind of seem to get a little bit sharper before dulling again. And I experienced that in Vancron more than any steel I've ever experienced it in before. Every time I thought it was dead, it just kept coming back, and that started around 500 feet. And looking at the chart that I've got up on the screen right now, you can see that that happened a total of 8 different times, which is insane. Like literally 8 times I thought this thing was dead, and it came back. My hypothesis has always been with that like phenomenon, as the matrix wears away, a fresh layer of carbide's exposed, giving it some more cutting power, and it just continues on for a little bit longer. So I made this diagram to kind of help explain my theory a little bit with the carbonitrides. You can see on the left here I've got these just vanadium carbides that are quite a bit larger than this side. Obviously these black pieces are the carbides, and they run throughout the entire edge. This is just like a diagram of the edge that I made. As this apex wears down and the matrix kind of wears out, you have so much carbide sticking out beyond the edge of the apex that there's less matrix holding this in place, so it's more easily removed from the matrix through cutting. Now with the carbonitrides, you can see they're much smaller, much closer in line with the size of the apex as it dulls and degrades, and because of that there's more matrix holding each one of these individual carbides in place because they're so much smaller. Also, this knife being at 68 HRC gives that matrix a little bit more strength to retain those carbonitrides, as well as just wearing more slowly in general. Obviously a harder steel, the matrix is just going to wear slower. So I messaged Roman on this just because I wanted to kind of pick his brain on what he thought happened here, and I gave him that theory that I had, that hypothesis, He said the idea is plausible, but with the vanadium carbonitrides ranging between 3 to 4 microns on average, that may be a bit too large for that to be happening. And I kind of came up with that hypothesis based on Laren's article on Vancron, which shows some visibly smaller carbonitrides than the carbides in 10V and Vanadis 8, as well as an older Triple B video where he says the theory is that the carbonitrides in Vancron are 1 micron and under. Unfortunately, there's no real way to know this without this particular knife being put under SEM imagery. So what I really think it boils down to is Roman just kind of being an evil heat treat genius and optimizing the heck out of this Vancron. Someone may look at Laren's results for Vancron in his edge retention testing and wonder why it's so low in comparison to my testing. A couple of things to keep in mind. Neither of his tests were at 68 HRC. The maximum was 66.4, obviously this is at 68. That makes up some difference. But I also believe he was using protocols from the datasheet, while Roman was custom, obviously, and optimized for what he wanted in a knife. But the main thing is the issue that I have with Catra testing. I think Catra is a great test because it's so standardized and scientific, but the media used in it is so abrasive that I believe it skews results a bit towards the high carbide steels and a high carbide volume alone. When you use a different media that's not quite as abrasive, it allows some steels to separate themselves a little bit more. And that's why I think cardboard is just kind of a good media to use. Now, I'm not saying one is any better than the other, but it's good to have data points from each, I think. And they, most of the time they do line up, but not always. Now, the amazing thing about testing this Vancron is that after all of that cardboard was cut, the edge was still able to cut paper some of the time. If you caught it in the right spot, it would catch, but if you started to cut back here and advanced it through that worn out section, it would cut right through it. Or if you didn't start it on the one dull spot in the edge, it would just continue to cut paper. So still very impressive. I tried stropping it back on that 16 micron CBN and it came back a tiny bit, but there was one shiny spot still, and I'm assuming that's where it was hanging up. I'll throw some USB microscope pictures up on the screen right now. You can kind of see the shiny spots in the edge from the testing, and then after the stropping you can see the one little spot that still remains. Now, in conclusion, this is why I really enjoy doing this kind of testing. For every 15 knives that you have that go the way that you think, you get an oddball like this one, and it really kind of makes you think about why something happened and dig a little bit further. I really do hope to see more Vancron in the industry. I know that there's a few knives out there. Obviously, it's not going to perform like Roman stuff here, but I think it's a steel worth exploring a little bit. I really wouldn't expect it to perform like this knife, but I mean, if you can get something that's going to put out production 300, 400, 500 feet, that'd be a good addition to the knife industry. I am going to link Laren's article. I'm going to link Roman's website down below. I'm going to link that Triple B video that I pulled the carbonitride size from. Everything that I've kind of talked about in this video, if I've got information from somewhere else, it's going to be in the description if you guys want to go check those out. Huge thanks to Elliot from Sharp Thinking for sending this thing along. I'll put his Instagram down in the description. Very expensive knife for him to send my way to test, so I totally appreciate it. Huge thanks to Roman Kase for his insight and answering any of the questions that I had on this crazy stuff. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. So if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like down below and subscribe if you aren't already. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.